Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Noé Campos Gonzalez. Gonzalez was shot and killed on Wednesday, October 1st, 2008, in the 800 block of South La Brea Avenue in Mid-Wilshire, according to LA County coroner records. Leon Banks, David Gardiner, Brandon Daniels, and Lovey Troy Matthews were subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. The La Brea Collective is an LA medical marijuana dispensary. At its 2008 location, the dispensary had a metal security door providing access from the sidewalk, and behind that door, a sally port and a second lockable door leading into the lobby. Patients who rang the doorbell were required to pass ID and a physician's medical marijuana recommendation through a slot in the door to a security guard, victim Noé Gonzalez, stationed in the sally port. Once the papers were verified, patients would then be escorted through the sally port and a second locked door into the dispensary lobby. Surveillance cameras monitored the premises. On the afternoon of October 1st, 2008, an employee looked at the camera monitor and saw victim Gonzalez being escorted into the lobby by two men armed with guns. The two men and a third accomplice, later identified as defendants Leon Banks, David Gardiner, and Brandon Daniels, began tying up employees and searching the premises. One of them asked an employee, "Where's the stuff at?" When shots were fired, the three stopped and fled. An employee watched on the monitor as the three reached the front door and struggled to exit. Banks returned to the lobby and fired a shot out the front window. After additional shots were fired, the three were able to escape. A witness across the street saw the victim trying to push the front door closed from the outside. The witness saw defendant Banks reach his hand around the door from the inside and shoot the victim. As the victim fell, defendant Banks stepped out and shot him again. Defendants Banks, Garner, and Daniels fled on foot. A driver passing the dispensary at approximately 3:45 p.m. heard popping sounds and saw defendant Banks and the victim struggling at the dispensary front door. Both had guns and were reaching around the door and shooting at each other. When the driver pulled over and looked back, he saw the victim lying on the sidewalk. On the residential street 1 block from the dispensary, a man was standing on the sidewalk in front of his house when defendant Daniels ran by and asked to use his bathroom. The man refused, causing defendant Daniels to pause. An SUV with paper license plates reading "Power" came around the corner, and defendant Daniels screamed, "Troy, Troy," defendant Matthews' middle name. The SUV slowed without completely stopping. Defendant Daniels jumped in, and another man, later identified as defendant Gardner, came across the street and jumped in as well. Defendant Matthews drove off. Police responding to the scene found the victim dead on the sidewalk, and a revolver with his DNA on it on the ground near his outstretched arm. The revolver contained 2 live rounds and 3 spent rounds. Within minutes, defendant Banks was captured on foot near the dispensary. Later that afternoon, an SUV with paper plates was stopped a few blocks from the dispensary. Defendant Matthews, the driver and sole occupant, was arrested. The SUV was registered to defendant Banks and another person, and clothing belonging to Banks was found inside. In a field show-up, witnesses ID'd defendant Banks as a shooter. Over the next few days, police found at or near the dispensary a photocopy of a doctor's medical marijuana recommendation and defendant Banks' driver's license, zip ties, gloves, a holster, and a semi-automatic handgun. DNA, fingerprint, and palm print testing tied defendants Banks, Daniels, and Gardiner to the dispensary, gloves, zip ties, and doctor's statement, but excluded defendant Matthews. Ballistics tests confirmed the semi-automatic handgun was the murder weapon. Defendant Matthews was wearing a GPS tracking device that showed his movements to within 15 meters. An expert testified defendant Matthews was on the block containing the dispensary at 2:51 p.m., then 3 blocks away at 3 p.m., where he remained for approximately 45 minutes. At 3:46 p.m., Matthews moved toward the dispensary and made a series of stops within a few blocks of it over the next few minutes. A gang expert testified defendants Matthews, Gardiner, and Daniels were members of the Rolling 30s criminal street gang. The gang's primary activities were described generally as narcotic sales, burglaries, robberies, shootings, attempted murders, and gun possession. No evidence was presented that defendant Matthews, Gardiner, or Daniels had killed before, or that defendant Matthews knew any of the 3 had killed before. The expert testified defendant Banks was not a member of the gang. Defendant Gardiner was apprehended in July 2009, and defendant Daniels was apprehended in March 2010. Defendant Daniels was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for his role in the charged crimes. Defendant Gardner pleaded no contest to first-degree murder and on April 30th, 2013 was sentenced to 45 years to life. Defendants Matthews and Banks were convicted in a jury trial of first-degree murder, attempted second-degree robbery, and second-degree commercial burglary. The jury found that the murder was committed during the burglary or attempted robbery. Defendants Matthews and Banks were sentenced to state prison for life without the possibility of parole for the murder with special circumstances. In July of 2020, defendant Matthews appealed and the appeals court vacated his first-degree murder conviction and resentenced him on the remaining counts. He was later released after time served. Noé Campos Gonzalez was 25 years old at the time of death.